Um, I'm going to reread those past two pages. Don Juan and the Marquis de Sade. If we shut our eyes after gazing at a white statue, we shall have the image of a black. In the same way, the eclipse of the myth conjured up the exact opposite of Tristan. If Don Juan, historically speaking, is no invention of the 18th century, the period nevertheless played in relation to this character the very part assigned in Manichaean doctrine to Lucifer as regards creation. The period gave shape to Tirso de Molina's, Don Juan, Tenorio, and endowed the hero of that play with two thoroughly typical features, noirceur and rascality. Nothing could be more directly the reverse of the twin virtues of chivalrous love, candor and courtesy. The way in which the mystical character of Don Juan stirs the emotions of woman and fascinates the minds of some men is to be accounted for, I fancy, by his infinitely contradictory nature. Don Juan is at one and the same time sheer spontaneity of instinct and sheer mind aflutter over the sea of possibility. He is constant in constancy, and also the constant quest of the one woman whom desire, in its untiring self-deception, is never able to find. He is the insolent avidity of a youth renewed at every fresh encounter, and he is also the hidden weakness of an inability to possess because devoid of enough being ever to have. Let me be content with taking the dramatic Don Juan as an inverted reflection of Tristan, and in Mozart's Don Giovanni rather than in Molière's Don Juan, for the latter, in my opinion, is by far the less significant. Footnote, it may be mentioned incidentally that at its original production in the 17th century, Molière's play had no success. End of footnote. The contrast occurs first in the external demeanor and movement of the two characters. Don Giovanni seems always to be riding the high horse and always to be poised in readiness to leap forward again whenever he chances to have halted in his progress. But Tristan walks onto the stage with the somnambulistic deliberation of one hypnotized by some object of wonderful and inexhaustible value. The former possessed 1,003 women, footnote, in Spain alone, and plus 1,062 in other countries. And that footnote was by the translator, end of footnote. The former possessed 1,003 women, the latter only one. But it is the man of many who is poor, whereas in a single being infinitely possessed, there is concentrated the wide world. Tristan can forego the world because he loves, but Don Giovanni, although incessantly loved, is never able to love in return. Hence his anxiety and his agitated wanderings. Don Giovanni seeks in the act of love a voluptuous profanation. By remaining chaste, Tristan wishes to achieve a divinizing prowess. Don Giovanni's line is rape, and no sooner has he scored than he surrenders the field and flees. But the rule of courtly love made of rape the crime of crimes, a felony for which there is no remission, and of homage a pledge unto death. Don Giovanni, however, likes crime for its own sake, and in that way subjects himself to the morality which he transgresses. In order to enjoy abusing it, he has the greatest need of its existence. Tristan, instead, considers that he is freed from the play of rules, from sins and virtues, having been granted the grace of a virtue which transcends both the world and the law. In sum, the antithesis is as follows. Don Giovanni is the demon of unalloyed eminence, a prisoner of worldly appearances, and the martyr of a more and more deceptive and despicable sensation, whereas Tristan is the prisoner of a realm lying beyond night and day, and the martyr of a rapture which is transformed at death into unalloyed bliss. It may also be noted that if, when the commander holds out his hand in the last act, Don Giovanni jokes, laughs loudly, and provokes death, he thereby redeems in a supreme act of defiance the base deeds that would have dishonored a true knight. But Tristan, sad and brave, never surrenders his pride till luminous death is at hand. I see the two to have only one feature in common. Both appear sword in hand. From about the time Louis XIV died in 1715 till Louis XVI ascended the throne in 1774, Don Juan reigned over the dreams of a French aristocracy that had gradually fallen from feudal heroism. The Duke of Richelieu and the Duke of Lauzun, on the topmost social rungs, Besenval and Casanova at the level of the rascally adventurer. Such were the paragons who took the place of the ideal destroyed in the preceding century. The repression of the myth by an all-embracing irony and the applauded triumph of felons soon excited some curious reactions. Amid so much pliancy, so much intellectual and sensual refinement, so much satiation, one most profound human need was left ungratified, the need of suffering. If the body social encourages this need, it grows enfeebled, as is shown by the waning of the Middle Ages. But if the body social remains unconscious of this need or imagines that the need can be ridiculed, it quickly dries up and grows enervated. Thereupon the mind proceeds to invent in the guise of acts of cruelty the sufferings it has forbidden the heart to undergo. Kindness is a stranger to those who have not suffered. Their fancies lose all vital touch and all capacity for being in sympathy. Woman, in the eyes of men of the 18th century, was merely, quote, an object, end of quote. At one extreme, there had been the ideal woman, the unalloyed symbol of a love drawing love away beyond visible forms. At the other, there was now woman as a mere means to pleasure, the more or less agreeable instrument of a sensation which kept men self-isolated. I distinguish in the contradiction between Don Juan and Tristan and the intolerable tension of a mind that experiences this contradiction for itself because susceptible to sensuality and desirous of the courtly idea, the basis for the writings of the Marquis de Sade and the very motives of his rebellion. Sade admired the poetry of Petrarch, as he remarks in his Crimes de l'Amour. The admiration had been traditional in his family ever since his direct ancestor, Hugues de Sade, married Petrarch's lady, Lar de Noves. Footnote. Abbé de Sade, the Marquise's uncle, is the author of Remarques sur les premiers poètes français et les troubadours, and of 3 anonymous volumes of Memoirs of Petrarch. End of footnote. Petrarch seems to have been simply unaware of the existence of either desire or bodies, unaware of the reality of, quote, an object, end of quote. Sade, a product of the 18th century, was only too conscious of its monotonous tyranny. What Petrarch ignored was the physical obstruction upon which a lover has to get his own back. Yet the object is only too unmistakably there. It is the means to pleasure, and pleasure is a doom. How be released from it except by excess, since all excess issues from the mind? Nothing could be more icily rational than the countless, quote, voluptuous, end of quote, inventions of the Marquise's rage. Where pleasure is, there must be suffering be. Where pleasure is, there must suffering be. And suffering is the sign of a redemption. We are purified by evil. Let us sin then to the utmost so as to destroy it by subjecting it to tortures which will nevertheless afford us some pleasure. And this will be part of our ascesis. A dialectical frenzy seized Sade. Only murder can restore freedom, and it must be the murder of the beloved, inasmuch as loving is what fetters us. Only one's love can be really killed, for one's love alone is sovereign. The crime of an impure love will redeem purity. With this key in hand, let us now consider a passage from La Philosophie du Boudoir, in which Dolmans puts forward a moral defense of murder. Quote, "What," he says, "an ambitious sovereign shall be able to destroy as he likes and without scruple the foes that hamper the execution of his schemes for achieving greatness. Cruel, arbitrary, and imperious laws shall likewise murder in every century millions of human beings. And yet weak and unfortunate private persons such as ourselves should not be allowed to sacrifice a single being to our revenge or to our caprice. Could anything be more barbarous or more ridiculously queer? And should we not, under cover of the most profound mystery, avenge ourselves abundantly for this absurdity?" End of quote. Had the Marquis de Sade been asked what were the inner motives of his weird moral professions, no doubt he would have taken refuge in a cold-blooded prolixity. But every one of his arguments is transparent. They all mean the exact opposite of what they say literally. Footnote. Sade wrote Juliette ou les Malheureux de la Vertu, 1791, and then Justine ou les Prospérités du Vice. It is the exact opposite, and therefore According to psychoanalysis, the exact opposite of this opposite, and so on. Of remedies for one and the other fortune by Petrarch. C.A. Singria remarks in his Petrarch. End of footnote. His glorification of sex is a continual and deliberate profanation of the profaned 18th century morality. It is the act of an atheist taking, quote, the negative way, end of quote, because he despairs of unloosing his bonds, and therefore challenging love to manifest itself by killing the criminal. Footnote. The above analysis of the sadistic crime has been strikingly supported in two remarkable studies by Pierre Klasowski. Le mal et la négation d'autrui dans la philosophie de D.A.F. de Sade. Recherches philosophiques, Paris 4, 1934 to 1935. And Temps et agressivité, 1935 to 36. The author considers that Sade looked upon evil as the only element in nature. In La Nouvelle Justine, there occurs this passage, quote, yes, I hold nature in abhorrence, and this is because I am only too well aware that I detest it, apprised of its horrible secrets. I have taken a kind of pleasure in copying its dark wickedness. Hence the sadistic desire to obtain release from the tyranny of sex through excesses of debauchery. Another truly Manichaean attack on creation is as follows, quote, the life principle in every being is no other than the death principle. We take in both at one and the same time and nourish them within us, end of quote. But if life and created nature are but dark wickedness and cruelty, it becomes necessary to obtain release from them by exceeding this cruelty and wickedness. And there is but the alternative to be cruel either to ourselves or to others. Sade chose others. He preferred to be a criminal rather than a victim. Hence, the sadistic conscience is the antithesis of the romantic conscience. The romantic, Petrarch, punishes himself in order to preserve the beloved, whereas Sade sought to kill the beloved. End of footnote. For only thus could release be obtained, according to the faith of the troubadours.